So we've been talking about behavioral interviews and also about panel interviews. A panel interview is basically um, a performance, and you're the star. When you go before a panel, excuse me, when you go before a panel, they're looking at you and trying to size you up. And what you need to do as a performer is to kind of get them in your corner, establish their trust. The way you establish trust is to make sure that you know what you're talking about, be honest and direct with them, and be approachable and likable. We're going to talk about this in just a second. The idea they're looking for, what they're all looking for, is do you really want this job? And people can usually tell by the energy that you put in the interview whether you want it or you don't. So would you love this job? Are you qualified? Have you done things like this before, at least close to this? And can we stand working with you? I mean, are you likable? That's a big deal in an interview. Believe me, sometimes it's the main deal. After the other assumptions are covered, would we like you? And likability is very important. Now, before the interview, let's talk about pre-interview. Pre-interview, what you should do is Google each one of the people on the panel. Now, if you already know them, that's different. If you're working inside and you already know all the history, but you'd be surprised what you can find out by going to LinkedIn or what you can find out by going to Google. Things like where they grew up, where they were born, and things like that are really helpful in helping you when you make your points. Sometimes you can connect to them and saying, hey, by the way, I grew up in Boston as well. Connecting with people as you tell your story, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. Really important stuff. The second point to remember in the pre-interview, this is that everybody is interviewing you all the time. From the moment you walk into the building, people are looking at you. So be kind to everybody, even the person setting up the interview. I've seen interviews tubed by secretaries who didn't like the attitude you had on the phone and how abrupt you were to them, tell other people on the panel what a jerk you are before the interview. See, the interview was almost tubed from the very beginning. So be careful how you treat people. I mean, presumably you treat people well all the time, but be careful because everybody is interviewing you. You're being interviewed all the time by everybody. The next thing I want you to remember are nonverbals. There's a guy named Albert Morabian who is at UCL and did a lot of work with people connecting to other people, which is so important. We talked about likability before. What Morabian found out through extensive work over the years, that of the words of a conversation that people have with others, only 7% of the meaning comes from the words themselves. 38% comes from the tone of the voice of the other person. The person energetic? Are they into what they're saying? And then 55% comes from facial expressions. Think about that. That most of what people, the impression you form on people, most of it's nonverbal. So pay attention to the way you present. Are you smiling? Are you happy? Do you seem engaged? Is there real power behind your voice? Those kinds of things. So the first thing you want to remember is smile. Don't come in dour and like the end of the world is going to happen. Come in and smile. When you walk in the door, maybe go up to each of the people in the panel and introduce yourself and say, nice to be here, good to meet you. Look them in the eyes. Eye contact, very, very important. So smiling, number one. Number two, eye contact. Eye contact is real important for building credibility. All right. Think of the old father when the daughter brings somebody home. He wants the guy to look him in the eyes to see if he's lying or not. Well, having had two daughters, I can tell you that's part of the game. But think of three people in a panel or so. And when you come in and someone asks you a question, look at the person asking the question so that you understand the question, maybe even repeat it back so that you know what you're talking about. But as you answer it, look at each of the people on the panel as you're answering the question. Otherwise, the people on the edges are going to feel left out, particularly if it's a long answer. Make eye contact. Spend that few moments in the beginning with the person asking you the question so that you understand the question. Again, repeat it back, and then give eye contact to everybody on the panel as you answer that question. Second, so eye contact, number one, after smiling. Voice variation, up, down, kind of what I'm doing right now. When I want to emphasize something, I might speed it up. Or if I want to emphasize something, I might just slow it down and tell you this is really important. Variation in voice tone really helps people stay with you. There's nothing worse than someone who talks like this all the time in a very monotone way, and then it goes on for a moment to moment. That's a terrible distraction for most people. So variation, you can use, obviously you can use your hands. Now I'm Italian, so I was sort of born that way, but you can show differences. It's almost like it's almost like using air quotes. You can draw pictures for people to see the size of the problem or how small it was. It's an important addition to make. The next point I want to make is the story sandwich. The story sandwich. The story sandwich is tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them, tell them, and then tell them what you told them. It's just think of it as sandwich with the hamburger in the middle, right? And the hamburger in the middle is the story that we've talked about already with you. Tell them the 2 or 3 things that you've done in the past, and then maybe tell a story about how that encapsulates that, and then summarize it in the end. Whether it's a fit or behavioral interview, there's always this: tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. And then the last part of what I would say here is leave well. Always have 1 or 2 questions available if you can to ask them, because they're all going to say to you, do you have any questions to us? You don't want 5 of them, but you want 1 or 2 good questions, like, what's been the history of this job in terms of people in it? Who has succeeded, who has not? Ask a thoughtful question at the end, 1 or 2. I wouldn't go more than that. Then I would leave with telling them again that they want to know whether you'd love the job, whether you're qualified, and whether they can deal with you. So I would always leave with telling them, hey, look, let me just say that thank you for having me in today. Let me tell you why I think I love this job. It plays to my strengths, et cetera, et cetera. And then how I'm qualified. I have these qualifications. And then this is how I think I would fit in. And I think I'd be a good fit here because boom, boom, boom. Those 3 things at the end sort of summarize it. Thank them, stand up, shake their hands, fist bump them, each individually before you leave, and then walk out. And then be nice to everybody on the way out, just like you were on the way in. Everybody is interviewing you all the time. Thanks a lot. I'll see you soon. Take care.